So, first question. So what advice would perhaps I give myself knowing what I know now as an athlete when I first started out in triathlon? Well, a long time ago, my first triathlon race, and it was a bit of a fun event at college. It was about 1987, I think it was, and it was just a basic fun event, swim, bike run, just around Cheltenham. Good fun, but really enjoyed it. First real taster of a multi-discipline event. I then did a few later on in about 1998, little local ones, and then a few the Newent triathlon, sprint distances then, and then I didn't really start doing longer distance triathlons or Ironmans till about 2013, 70.3, and then did Wales, Tenby, and then obviously a few others since then, taking more of a focus. But what I learned over the period of time, what would I do differently at the very beginning? I think certainly one of the things I do differently is I have a plan. I was never really structured in the early days. I loved the triathlon, loved the event, and just went out running, went out cycling, did some swimming, no specific focus, just getting the miles in, and there was no plan. It was, I go from one day to the next thinking, oh, what I'll do tomorrow? I'll go for a swim, or I'll do something like go for a bike ride, or I'll go for a run. Nothing of great distances, but just went out and did it, and then come race day, I'd take part and enjoy the race, but with no real sort of time for speed, but just enjoyment. Knowing now, perhaps, what I would have done is I've certainly had a plan. I've planned out my training program. I'd be a lot more structured in what I did. So that's the first thing I would have done differently, knowing now what I know about training. The other thing, I perhaps would have trained harder and perhaps trained smarter. And those two things sort of are always there, you know, to go out and actually train as hard as you can when you need to train hard, to be focused on your training. And perhaps train smarter. Think of times when you should be training, perhaps, or recovery. And when you're training smarter, maybe think about what those goals are that you're focusing on when you're out on your bike. Are you sticking to your training plan? But to really train really smart, not to waste that time. And then perhaps finally, if I could afford it, I would have had a coach. I would have actually gone straight down that line and got someone to give me sort of direction, to work with me, to work out, or for me to work out my strengths and weaknesses, because coaching, as we know, is all about discovering yourself. Your coach can guide you, but at the end of the day, it's about perhaps discovering your strengths and weaknesses. And that quite often comes from having guidance and from someone who knows what you should be looking for. So perhaps those three things are things, if I went back again and had my time again right at the very beginning, I took up triathlon seriously early, I'd have a plan. I'd train a lot harder, and I'd train smarter from that point of view. And I'd get someone to give me some sort of some professional guidance and direction, so that I could really take that on board, the best way of becoming a top athlete or a better athlete. So those are the things that I'd do if I had my time again, if I started off right from the beginning, knowing what I now know about those levels of competencies and the levels of competing as we are now. Okay. I love this second question. How many bikes do I have, and what's my favourite bike? Well, I've only got 3 bikes. The number one bike that's been with me the longest is what I call my town bike. It takes me to town and back again. It's an old mountain bike. It's a Doors Die Hard, I think it's called. Yeah, I got it as a mountain bike originally, with a hardtail. No suspension, took it on a few trail runs many years ago, but I use it now just to go into town and back again, as opposed to taking the car. So that's my number one bike. The second bike is my trusty road bike, the one I use to to go to school and back into work and back again. And obviously sometimes, and obviously at the weekends as well on long rides, training rides. Yeah, it's a full carbon spec. It's about 12 years old now. Scott CR1, very comfortable, very basic setup, very comfortable as I said. It's my second bike. I suppose it's the workhorse bike I use for most of my training, for grinding out those miles, and for keeping my fitness levels up. Then of course I've got the Cervelo, my time trial bike, which is the third bike. So with three bikes there, which I tend to use the road bike, the second bike most of the time, and also the time trial bike when I'm out doing specific sets out on the road. So when I think about my favourite bike, I think unquestionably my favourite bike is the one behind me. It's my TT, and absolutely love it. It's taken me a few years to get the kit set up on it, to have the right wheels, and the Parker wheels are really comfortable for riding on. So all the gadgets are on the bike for me. It's got me to various different sort of levels, right from the beginning to improving, to winning age groups. So it's absolutely brilliant. Absolutely love it. It's comfortable. I've still got work on it to do with my aero position. I know that's a factor. As we get older, of course, flexibility starts to creep in, and it becomes a lot more difficult to get down on the bars and to hold out that flat back shape. But I know that working on core strength and flexibility will certainly improve that position, and I've noticed an improvement over the last couple of months. So I'm pleased with that. But certainly the Cervelo the P3 is my favourite number one bike out of the three bikes I have. So, third question. How do I still, this is interesting, how do I still manage to get faster and find more speed at my age, whilst perhaps balancing sort of work and family life together? Yeah, really good question. Not sure about the speed bit, but there's a few things that I know that are quite personal to me and do help me along my journey, and it's been something with me in my competitive sporting career. That's the clue there, competitiveness. I still believe that I can go faster than I am at the moment. I still think there's more speed in me, especially on the bike, as that's the biggest discipline out of the three in those Ironman races. So I'm really passionate about trying to seek out any advantages I can to make me go faster. And it obviously comes through training and a few other bits and pieces there. The other thing I love is being surrounded by like-minded athletes, being with people that are passionate about their sport, who have a real sense of drive. And I guess I get that sort of vibe from them, and I pick up on it myself, and it makes me become really driven, because it's lovely being out with people of the same sort of passion as you have in training, and also on race day as well too. I'm also, as you know, very competitive. May not come across that way when out training, but come race day, the blinkers go on, and become really focused. And I don't know what, but when I'm racing, I absolutely love it. It's everything goes full steam ahead. I'm focused. I love the competitiveness. I love being out there. You've done all your prep. You've worked out where your kit is. You've looked at the course. The only thing left to do is just a race. And I really, really enjoy the race elements of the sport. Of course, I always want to do my best. I always want to represent myself in the right way, conduct myself in the right way, it's something you have. You either learn it or you have it naturally. I think I've learned it as I've gone through life, but not only do you enjoy things, but to do the best you can. And it's even like when you're going out on bike rides. So I was out the other day with a good friend, and I think I counted about 30 people I said hello to on bikes and going past. It makes you feel good, and it gives me a real buzz just to be out there and representing who I am to people. Not that I've met the people, but just being out there and doing my very best and being the right sort of advocate for the sport more than anything else. And then, of course, as I mentioned earlier on, it's about training harder. When I do my training rides, I try and train as hard as I can when I'm supposed to be training hard, but also smart as well too. And you think about the slippery roads out there at the moment, and you could say being smarter means, taking the corner much easier. You're not racing. You don't have to race around a corner. If you take it too fast, and the grease out there at the moment, you go flying. So it's about thinking not just about the intensities, but also about the actual geography and when you're out, making the right decisions when you're out on your bike, as an example. Work is challenging. There's no doubt about that, and I think that has a direct reflection on my training program. And there's a few things that just share with you on that. We all have our sort of long-term goals. I still have a goal at the moment, which has been there for the last 5 years, a bit longer maybe, but it's something that's in the back of my mind all the time. I have look at periodization, look at your yearly plan, your 3 months, and then your 3 weeks, and then what you're doing next week, all written out. But because of the work commitment I have, and some days I'm not back on time, other days I start early, there's no easy day, you can't plan what goes outside of the working day. I try and train specifically on 2 days at a time and make sure I nail those sessions. Then if something changes the following 2 days, you've got advance notice, you can plan it a little bit more. But I try and make sure that 2 days, so I know what I'm doing tomorrow, and I know I'm doing on Tuesday. And then after, I'm not too sure what will happen with work and commitments there. So I try and keep it as short-term specific as possible. Family, they're amazing. It's always very challenging at times with members of your family in a positive way, depending on relatives and depending upon family situation. I'm very lucky, very stable, absolute rock solid stable family, and support throughout. But there are things that come up, moving houses, parents, etc., and you have to manage those, and they take a priority, always a priority, and I think that is always your go-to situation. If things are right at home in the camp, then you should be in a good position to do some training. So, fourth question. Yeah, another good one as well too. So thank you for that. And it is perhaps now that I'm in the sort of 55 to 59 age group category, soon to be 60, 64. Okay, time has catch up quickly. How do I manage my training intensities, especially in comparison to many of the younger athletes that are around today? Yeah, another really good question. I guess I've always tried and work to the principle of training up to 15 hours a week, especially in sort of the main bulk of the training sort of season before races commence. I don't get too upset if I fall short of that. I know that I'm able to do quite a bit of active sort of work on my fitness when I'm actually in the workplace. and sort of the stretching aspect of things and the flexibility can take place during the working day. But in terms of sort of the load, the amount I train, it doesn't go more than 15 hours. In fact, it probably hovers around about the 10 hours to maybe 12 hours, and sometimes up to 15, depending on the length of the bike ride at the weekend normally. So from that aspect, time-wise, yeah, it's important to get out there and get some hours in. Remember, you train smart. You're just not just going out for the sake of it. There's specific things you're doing, whether out on your bike ride or out on your run, whether it's technique, form, etc. Really enjoy doing that, and perhaps focusing on one or two things. I know perhaps my arm running technique needs some improvement, but it's comfortable and it works for me. I do a lot of work on perceived effort, as you know. I haven't got a watt meter or power meter on my bike, so I've got no real indication of what my power output is when I'm out cycling. Never have done. It'd be interesting to put one on perhaps and see how I do work with it, but I tend to go on, how I'm feeling, my perceived effort levels, and that's important, not just on the run but also on the bike as well too. With that in mind, I try and keep testing myself using the same routes, and try and also note the weather conditions as well. But in terms of the intensities and how I work, I tend to stick to very familiar routes that I know, and the mileage as well. So for example, when I'm sort of build up towards the 70.3, I know a route that takes me to sort of Broadway and back, and try and do a bit of a negative split on the bike on the way back if I can. And I know exactly what sort of time, where my PB is on that distance, in all different weathers. So that's a good indicator. It helps me guide and judge where I am at the time of my training, within my training. It's the same on the way to work. There are a number of hills that I can take in, not so much on the way to work. Obviously, the Painswick Hill's the first one, but again, depending on how I'm feeling, I'll know how I'm working based on that perceived effort levels. And clearly on the way home, we can take a whole different route back via sort of the Stroud Valleys, and depending on the training schedule, will depend on how many hills I take in, and what the focus that set is on the way back. So that's really good. And we're very lucky here in Gloucestershire to have such great facilities and local geography to be able to complement our training. So there are perhaps the routes that the things I do in terms of working on intensities. It's as I said, comparing young people, one doesn't compare. I mean, it's about enjoyment at the end of the day, and I love my recovery. Having worked, sort of done 15 hours and done your 3 weeks of hard block of work, that recovery period at the end is really refreshing. It really helps you recharge, and that's a big thing for me. I might sneak a few extra recovery days in during the week. I need to sort of catch up on my sleep a bit more, but certainly I'm happy to, I'll plan my 2 days in advance, as I said before. I'll stick to those. But if for some reason, those 2 days went really well, I'm feeling quite tired, I will certainly take a day out in the middle of the week for recovery. And for me, that is really important. I need to make sure that recovery is there, so when I come back train again, the intensity is back again. I'm focused on what I want to achieve, and the goals are then are ticked, which is exactly what I need to do. So that's a really good question. I suppose really what I'm thinking of is obviously entering up the next sort of age category in a year's time, looking to see what sort of competitions and what sort of events can enter. But the intensity, it doesn't really bother me about younger athletes and how they manage their intensities. It's all about myself. As I said, I work off their intensities and I work off being surrounded by like-minded athletes, which is fantastic. But I have to think about my body, I have to think about where I am on my journey, and whether it's relevant to push myself too hard at the wrong time. And that's always a big juggling act, you know. You've got your plan you stick to, but do you go out that one more session that's planned when you know you're broken from the one before? Is it going to pay any dividends in doing that? And sometimes I have to say, no, it's not. I'm not in the right headspace. There are other things going on. I have to park that aside and then build it into a set the following week. But yeah, so I manage my own intensities, not by other people, and it seems to work. And let's hope that I can go a little bit faster maybe next year. Guys, great talking to you. I hope that was useful. First time done something on a camera like this. I don't envy Tom and Lauren. They've got great ability to talk and give some great information across on a live like this. But I hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully we'll be out training again shortly in a not so distant future. Stay safe, take care, and see you again. Cheers, folks.